She looks like a gorgeous model, but her voice stole the show. The voice. The moment she stepped onto the stage, the audience noticed her. It was impossible not to. Tall, elegant, and effortlessly confident, she carried herself like someone who belonged on the cover of a fashion magazine. The bright stage lights seemed to follow her naturally as she walked toward the microphone. Whispers immediately spread throughout the audience. "She looks like a model. Wow, she's stunning." Even backstage, contestants had been saying the same thing all day. Her name was Ava Monroe, 26 years old, a successful fashion model, and tonight she was about to challenge every assumption people had ever made about her. Because while many people saw beauty when they looked at Ava, very few ever bothered to look deeper. They saw the glamorous photos, the designer campaigns, the magazine covers, the social media followers, the polished image, but they never saw the countless nights she spent alone with a guitar. They never saw the songwriting notebooks hidden in her apartment. They never heard the voice she had spent years quietly developing. To most people, Ava was a model. To herself, she was a singer who happened to model. And tonight, she finally had a chance to prove it. Backstage, she stood quietly waiting for her name to be called. Unlike many contestants, she wasn't pacing, she wasn't rehearsing, she wasn't talking. She simply stood still, her eyes fixed on the floor, her hands clasped together, trying to control the storm happening inside her chest. A producer approached. "Nervous?" Ava laughed softly. "Very." The producer seemed surprised. "You don't look nervous." She smiled. "I've spent years pretending I'm not." That answer perfectly summarized her life. People assumed confidence came naturally to her. They thought beauty made everything easier. But confidence and appearance weren't the same thing. Ava had learned that lesson years earlier. Growing up, she loved music. Her earliest memories involved singing in the family living room while her parents played old records. She wasn't interested in fame. She wasn't interested in attention. She simply loved how music made people feel. As a teenager, she spent hours practicing vocals, writing songs, learning harmonies, dreaming about stages she had never seen. Then everything changed. At 17, a modeling scout discovered her. Within months, she was traveling. Within a year, she was working professionally. By 21, her career had exploded. Fashion shows, commercial campaigns, international travel, magazine features. Her life transformed almost overnight. People congratulated her constantly. "You've made it. You're living the dream. You're so lucky." Ava smiled and thanked them, but inside, something felt incomplete, because every success in modeling pulled her further away from music. Her singing became something she only shared with close friends. Every time she mentioned music publicly, people laughed. A model wants to sing? The assumption always felt insulting, as if beauty and talent couldn't exist together, as if one automatically canceled out the other. Eventually, she stopped talking about it, but she never stopped singing. Late at night, after photo shoots ended, she would sit alone in hotel rooms with her guitar, sometimes for hours. Music remained her escape, her safe place, her first love. Years passed. The desire to sing professionally never disappeared. In fact, it grew stronger. Then one evening, while scrolling online, she watched an episode of The Voice. Contestants stood behind the coaches. No one could see them. No one knew what they looked like. Only the voice mattered. For the first time in years, Ava felt hope. If there was ever a stage where appearance wouldn't define her, this was it. So she auditioned. Months later, she found herself standing backstage at one of the biggest opportunities of her life. The stage manager gave her a signal. "It's time." Ava took a deep breath, then walked toward the stage. The audience applauded politely. The coaches remained facing away from her, exactly as the format intended. No one could see her. No one knew she was a model. No one knew anything about her. For the next few minutes, only one thing would matter: her voice. The band prepared. The room grew quiet. A single spotlight illuminated the stage. Ava closed her eyes. The music began. And then she sang. The first note floated through the theater like silk, soft, controlled, beautiful. Immediately, the atmosphere changed. The audience stopped moving. The coaches leaned forward. There was something captivating about the sound. It wasn't just technically impressive. It was emotional, authentic, the kind of voice that made people listen. Every lyric felt personal. Every phrase carried meaning. Ava wasn't trying to impress anyone. She wasn't chasing high notes. She wasn't showing off. She was telling a story, and everyone in the room could feel it. One coach slowly raised an eyebrow. Another tilted their head. A third coach whispered, "Wow!" The audience erupted into applause after a particular beautiful run, but Ava remained focused. Years of waiting, years of doubt, years of being misunderstood. Everything poured into the performance. As the song reached the first chorus, her confidence grew. Her voice became bigger, stronger, more powerful. The room seemed to shrink around her. Suddenly, nothing else existed. Not the cameras, not the audience, not the pressure. Only the music. Then it happened. One coach slammed their button. The chair spun around. The crowd exploded. The coach's eyes widened instantly, not because of what they saw, but because they realized the voice was even more powerful than they imagined. Ava smiled slightly but continued singing. Moments later, a second chair turned. Then a third. 3 coaches, 3 champions, 3 people fighting for the chance to mentor her. The audience rose to their feet, but Ava wasn't finished. The bridge approached, and that's when the performance reached another level. She delivered a soaring note that echoed throughout the theater. The crowd gasped. One audience member covered their mouth. Another began crying. The coaches looked stunned. The final coach hesitated. Then, at the last possible moment, click, the 4th chair turned. The audience erupted. 4 chairs, complete domination. Backstage, producers cheered. Contestants watching from the wings stared in disbelief. Ava continued singing through the applause, completely immersed, completely fearless. When the final note finally arrived, the room fell silent. A breathtaking silence, then absolute chaos. The crowd exploded into applause. People jumped to their feet. The coaches stood and cheered. The entire arena shook with energy. Ava opened her eyes and saw 4 turn chairs. Her hands immediately flew to her face. She couldn't believe it. Years of dreaming, years of waiting, years of wondering whether anyone would ever take her seriously. And now 4 coaches wanted her. The audience continued cheering. One coach laughed. "Okay, that was incredible." The crowd applauded again. Another coach pointed toward her. "That voice is special." A third coach shook their head. "I have goosebumps." Then the coaches finally got a chance to look at her, and suddenly their expressions changed. Not because they were disappointed. Quite the opposite. They looked surprised. One coach laughed. "Wait a second." The audience laughed too. The coach continued. "You sound amazing, and you look like you just walked out of a fashion campaign." The crowd erupted. Ava smiled. The comment wasn't new. She had heard similar things her entire life, but tonight felt different. Tonight, the compliment came after the performance, not before it. That distinction mattered. Another coach asked, "So tell us about yourself." Ava hesitated, then answered honestly, "I am a professional model." The audience reacted immediately. Gasps echoed across the theater. The coaches looked shocked. "What?" The crowd laughed. One coach placed a hand over their chest dramatically. "Now I'm even more jealous." Everyone laughed. But then Ava shared something deeper. She explained how people rarely took her musical ambitions seriously, how they assumed modeling was her entire identity, how she often felt invisible as an artist. The room grew quiet. The audience listened carefully. One coach nodded. "I understand exactly what you're saying." Another agreed. "People love putting others into boxes." The audience applauded. Ava felt tears forming, because for the first time, she felt understood. Not judged, not dismissed. Understood. She explained how difficult it had been to pursue music while constantly battling assumptions. Some people believed she only received opportunities because of her appearance. Others assumed she couldn't possibly possess artistic depth. The criticism hurt, but she kept going, because music mattered too much to quit. One coach leaned forward. "You know what I love most about this audition?" Ava looked up. The coach smiled. "For the first 2 minutes, nobody knew what you looked like." The audience cheered. The coach continued. "And that's exactly why you're standing here." Ava wiped away tears. Those words meant everything, because that was all she had ever wanted. A fair chance. An opportunity to be heard before being judged. The coaches began making their pitches. Each one desperately wanted her on their team. One coach praised her emotional connection. Another highlighted her vocal control. A third focused on her star potential. The fourth simply said, "You already have something people spend years trying to find." The room grew quiet. The coach pointed toward her heart. Authenticity. The audience erupted. Ava smiled through tears. For years, she had questioned whether she belonged in music. Tonight, those doubts felt smaller. Not gone completely, but smaller. And that was enough. Eventually, the moment arrived. The choice. 4 coaches. 1 decision. The audience waited anxiously. The coaches practically begged. Everyone laughed. Ava took a deep breath, then revealed her choice.
winning coach jumped out of their chair. The crowd exploded. The celebration was immediate. The coach hugged her tightly. The audience cheered louder than ever. Backstage, tears flowed freely. Friends and family celebrated. Producers congratulated her. Contestants applauded. It felt like a dream. But perhaps the most remarkable part happened afterward. When the audition aired, millions watched. Millions shared clips online. Millions commented. And something surprising happened. People weren't talking about her appearance. At least not primarily. They were talking about her voice, her emotion, her artistry, her courage. For the first time in her life, music became the headline. Not modeling, not beauty. Music. Exactly as she had always hoped. Messages flooded social media. Many came from people who felt underestimated. People judged because of their appearance. People dismissed because of stereotypes. People who knew exactly what it felt like to be misunderstood. Ava's story resonated far.